In this video, I want to show you some of the best guitar riffs from some of the greatest bands and greatest guitarists ever that all happen to use triads. And I'm going to use this as a vehicle to get you guys to study triads because they're a fantastic tool to help you progress when learning guitar. And let me give you one great example. If you're an intermediate player or even a beginner, you might have covered how to play bar chords already. And let me take a typical song that most people learn with bar chords. Let's have a look at Sultans of Swing. To play the chorus with bar chords, you play a D chord, C, B flat, and be strumming in this fashion. And you would perhaps really struggle, but the way that's played using triads is in many ways much easier. Only having to bar with one finger. Even enabling us to play some single note riffs, more embellishments. But let's back up a little bit before we jump too much into songs, and let's just cover quickly, what is a triad? Well, if you can play a C major chord, or any chord in fact, you're already playing a triad. You're just playing the notes of the chord. Here's our C major chord, and it's the root note of this chord, what we call the third, and the fifth, which is just the notes of the major scale. If I count through the C major scale, root is 1, 2, 3, that's the third, 4, 5, that's the fifth. That is a C major triad. That would be the first thing that you would learn if you were in a piano lesson or a keyboard lesson. That takes us through string 5, 4, and 3 of the standard C major chord, and then strings 1 and 2 just double up the C, which is the octave of the root note C, and then that third again, which is an E note, which is the same as string 4. So all your common guitar chords do, like C major and G major, they take that triad, sometimes not in that order, but in the case of C major and G major, it is in triad order. First, third, fifth, the octave, the third, the fifth, and then the octave again, however you play a G major chord. Not every chord is laid out that way. E major isn't, D major isn't, but that's what's always happening. We don't have to play every note of that triad in order for it to be that chord. But pardon me for getting ahead of myself, because I promised we'd look at some fantastic songs in this video. If you want to learn more about that theory, check out the program that I've linked to at the top of the description below, where we look at this in my intermediate course in depth and show you how to practice them. But here's a riff that any absolute beginner can play, so long as you can play a D major chord. This is the intro of a song called Wholehearted by Extreme. So if you just play the D major chord and just play the thinnest 3 strings, that's a D major chord. You guys know that. But if we move it up 2 frets, this same shape we played with our fingers that we know so well becomes an E major chord, but this is a triad, or technically an inverted triad, because the lowest note is not an E. But to learn this riff, this is Wholehearted by Extreme, and we just play that D major, strum it twice, and then play an E major, but just the D chord moved up by 2 frets. The final way, that's the final move of that intro. And yes, there's a lot of fancy stuff in that song. It's such a quality one, and excuse me for playing something fancy, but if you could, you would too. Then in between that fancy section, we have these sections where it's just a D chord played higher up. And that is something that even a total beginner could do. A total beginner can learn how to play that D major chord, move it higher, and think, yeah, that sounds great still. That sounds good. That sounds good. And then we start to get into what other riffs we could play with the triads. So my first song choice would definitely just be that intro of Wholehearted. To move that up a level, that move from Wholehearted. Reminds me a lot of The End of the Line by the Travelling Wilburys. That uses the same D major shape but starting at the 7th fret and using the 8th fret. Moving 7 and 8 to 9 and 10, and then playing a D major triad using a new shape. This is basically an E major shape from an E major bar chord, but just playing the thinner 3 strings. And this song, I believe, was written by George Harrison, and he loved doing these sort of triad moves higher up the neck to create beautiful riffs, especially on acoustic, but on electric too. That's the D major chord with this E shape, but as a triad. This shape is an A major, moved up, da 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 da, keep it going, to 10 and 12, and 12 and 14, finishing with a D major chord 12 frets up from where we started, because it sounds pretty. Another song that mixes a D major chord with these other shapes, this new shape of the E shape but as a triad, and the A shape but actually only has 3 chords that we play, is Substitute by The Who. The 3 chords we actually play there are a G major and an A major and a D major. But to make that sound more interesting, to make it a riff, using these same basic shapes but moved higher up the fretboard, no bar chords, D major triad with the open D ringing out, but this is like an A shape moved up, it's like a D bar chord here, but just playing the thinner 3 strings, to a D major. This is an A major triad, like we did with the D earlier, but at 5, 5 and 6, and then 3, 3 and 4 is a G major triad. And because of the riff, the D is ringing out as a drone. But guitar-wise, we'd only ever fretting notes on the thinnest 3 strings, utilising triads. Another song moving those D, G and A triads around the fretboard is the intro to Under Pressure by Queen, starting off on that same D major chord. The way they play it live, I believe, goes to this way of playing the A and G, just like Substitute by The Who. And a little bit of major scale there. And the way it's played on the recording. Again, just moves this D major shape to the A position at 9 and 10, and the G position at 7 and 8. Stepping this up a little bit with more triad shapes that you should know. That are quite simple to do. They're not quick to learn, but once you've got them, you'll have them under your fingers forever because they're the basic open chords you know already. Check this one out. Roxanne by The Police is played with triads on the thinnest 3 strings, starting off with a G minor, which can be played with 1 finger or 3 fingers in a line like this at the 3rd fret. Move into the D minor chord shape. You guys know how to play the D minor chord. Move that D minor chord up to where the first finger is. That moves up to 6th fret, and then 7 and 8. To a D major chord starting at the 5th fret. This is the D major chord shape, but it actually sounds like an F chord. To a D sharp, finishing with an F sus4, to a G sus4. Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light. Those days are over. You don't have to sell your body to the night. You guys know this song. Did you know it used triads? Now these triads, or just playing 3 notes out of a chord that we might otherwise spread over 6 or 5 strings, can be played not only on the thinnest 3 strings, but of course any 3 strings. An example of that would be playing an A major chord, but just strumming strings 2, 3, and 4, and then playing like the D over A chord shape, but just playing those strings 2, 3, and 4, and using these chord shapes and moving them up, we can play some wonderful things, including Jack and Diane by John Mellencamp. This is using that D over A shape, but with the first finger barring at the 7th fret, the middle 3 strings, middle finger string 2 fret 10, 3rd finger string 4 fret 11, go into a flat 1st finger to play essentially an A major chord to an E, A, E, D. So like, but rather than every time you play an A chord and an E chord, it's sounding like this, we can play it like that and learn from this fantastic song. A song that uses that same move, and it's a John Mayer song, so of course you guys would want to learn this. This is Last Train Home. This starts off at 10, 9, and 11 to a flat 1st finger at the 9th fret of again strings 2, 3, and 4. Moving to frets 7, 8, and 9. Back to a flat 1st finger. That was moving to a B chord, back to E, and then A. Briefly here as well, but let me show you how this is essentially A, E, A, E, B, E, A, A, E, A, E, B, E, A, A, E, A, E, B, E, A. Very electric guitar song that sounds superb on acoustic. Definitely give that one a go if you wanted to take your triads down the fretboard into different levels. My final song choice is in drop D tuning, so we want to move this thickest D string down to D like this. This is another George Harrison song. I told you he liked these triad ideas. And this is Dear Prudence. And of course, this is going to be using triad shapes along with keeping this Travis picking pattern. Going in the low end, that would technically change the name of all these chords to something /D, basically, whatever triad we're playing, like D or C or G. This would be over the D chord or the A, but really, we're just playing triad shapes that we've covered already. like the D, the G, the A, and it's all within a wonderful riff. I'll leave you with this one. Hopefully there you can see how even learning basic open chord shapes higher up the neck can move your playing forward and stop you relying on just the basic cowboy chords or power chords and then playing lead over it. You can actually get this lead and rhythm hybrid, especially with riffs and embellishments over these simple chord progressions. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments below. I'll leave another couple of links on screen now that I think you might enjoy, and I will also leave a link to my intermediate course where we cover triads in depth with multiple lessons, really attacking this step by step in bite-sized chunks to make sure you acquire the knowledge before moving on. Check that link at the top of the description, and I'll see you over there. Bye-bye.